Hello everyone, welcome to Pep and Prep Talks, back with another episode of Breaking Down Careers, this time with Udit Goenka. Now Udit is a serial entrepreneur where he has founded multiple startups like Power Up Hosting, GoPBN, Funnelbake, and currently working on a SaaS marketplace that is Pitchground. Now he has immense amount of experience, and this episode is power packed with value for anyone who is literally starting their careers in their early 20s. So he has a lot to talk about in the space of SaaS, growth, marketing, content creation, and I think this is the most insightful episode we have ever had on our podcast channel. So I think you should go check it out. If you like the video, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to Pep and Prep Talks. Hello everyone, welcome to Pep and Pep Talks. Now Udit is here. I think we should start the conversation and just get right to it. So welcome Udit on Pep and Pep Talks. It's really a great pleasure to have you here. And I'm really hoping to talk about a lot of stuff that you're doing, which is related to SaaS, growth, marketing, everything. So I think we should get started. So
So initially when we were looking at like what questions to ask and what exactly how should we structure this, so we decided that we should be starting with your entrepreneurial journey. So can you shed light on it? Like how did you start? And you have started way back earlier, right? And we were probably kids back then. So how did you start and what was your journey?
Sure. Firstly, thank you so much, Bilwa and Mana, for inviting me to the show. Pleasure's all mine. So my journey began when I was 17. Started on the internet very early, just like how most of the kids right now have started the journey as freelancing, right? I was the one of those kids back then, started my journey as a freelancing. Freelancing, in fact, was a brand new term for me. One of my friend told me that, hey, Udit, why don't you start freelancing? Because I was already learning Photoshop. I was posting some of my work, and back in those days, they weren't like Facebook, Twitter. It was all about Orkut. So I come from that Orkut era, basically. So I used to post a lot of my work over there, and one of my friend told me that why don't you get started with freelancing? People will pay you, and I was like, who the heck is going to pay for my work, right? Just like anyone else, because you don't want to go figure out right now. Those are the age you want to learn, you want to just explore, you want to show off what you're doing, right? So started there and eventually landed my very first client when I was 17. It was a logo designing project. From there, it ended up being like few more projects, more projects. I was also pursuing my studies at the same time, and that's when like my interest started peeking in more into the technologies, what's happening, what's not happening. So I started teaching myself how to build products, how to write pieces of code. So I self-taught myself how to write those pieces of codes, and that's when I launched my very first product. It was around WordPress security. I was one of the very first person to actually dive into such kind of a product builder, but then ended up selling my project to my partner back then, because again, as a teenager, you don't know what you want to do. You just want to keep on exploring, keep learning, and see where the journey takes you during that stage. You don't want to figure out what you're going to do in your 30s, 40s, right? You just want to figure out what you're going to do tomorrow. So that's when I continued freelancing, and I founded my first business partner, and that turned into a very fantastic relationship where I flew down to US. I built my very first company, which was known as Power Posting. That was the first like registered company in the US. Flew down over there, was there for a good number of years. Came back over here, back to India, because my family would lived over here. So as I started maturing more, started realizing that family is what matters the most. And since I was already working on the internet, I thought I can just continue working on the internet, right? So, but those few years in the United States really changed my life in terms of me being a lot more proactive, understanding how things work, and it really changed me from being an introvert to an very heavy extrovert, right? And that sort of like reflects in my work. But if that wasn't the case, if I wouldn't be there, I'm not sure if I would be the same person who I am. But sort of helped me. And meanwhile, like I was also working on my very first SaaS back then. But that's what intrigued me about SaaS, because when I was working with Power Posting, when I was building that company, I started working with more SaaS companies and VPN companies. We were building their entire cloud infrastructure. So I would spend a lot of time speaking with a lot of these SaaS founders, right? And the whole SaaS concept was very exciting for me. And that made me build my very first SaaS, which I made an exit from a few years ago. Then at the same time, I made an exit from Power Posting. But then I started working on my third project, and that failed very badly, where I ended up losing about $200,000, which is around 1.5 crores. Ended up, it was a lot of mess, and that was probably the most expensive lesson life taught me, how to do things in the right way that you would not find in any books, you would not find in any courses, you would not find on YouTube channels, right? It's just life throwing you out there and throwing you in the swimming pool, asking you go and swim and then come out of it. That's exactly what happened. And during this entire journey, when that project failed, I was also in like a pretty heavy depression for a good 6 to 8 months. Took a lot of time to research, get going on a lot of different aspects of the things. And that's when I founded Pitchground. So when I started researching why my project failed, that's when I landed into a very critical article that changed my life. It was from Lighter Capital that said about 92% of SaaS companies fail in the first 3 years of their business. That number intrigued me because I was in that 92%, right? And as an entrepreneur, when you see a problem statement, you're like, I need to solve this, especially when you have gone through it. That's when I decided that I'm going to build a purpose-driven brand. I don't want other founders to go through it. Imagine the number of founders who have gone through it and crushed their journey of thinking they can win, they can be an entrepreneur, but after losing and after failing, they probably are thinking, let me just get a job, right? So many dreams are being crushed because of that. And that's when I founded Pitchground, started working on it, and have never looked back since then. We've done over $5 million in sales. We are bootstrapped. We're a team of 25 plus people right now, and we're growing. So everything that's good, that's happening with us. And again, we have single mission statement, a single purpose driven company, which is to help SaaS companies do not fall in the 92% category. So that's
incredible.
Yeah,
So,
very inspiring.
yes. So in fact, like, was your first company the web security company? What was the name again?
It was just a WordPress project. It was not really a company,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because when you are 17, you don't think about building
Yeah.
company back in there. It was more of a project for me.
Okay.
Okay. And the first project that you took successful exit out of was also a SaaS product?
Yes. So the first company that I built was Power Up Hosting. That was
Yeah.
my first real company. I made an exit from that as well, very successfully.
Okay.
So
And so like you have been in the SaaS industry for entire your career. So we can say that. Yeah, pretty much. That's incredible. And so then you came up with this idea of Pitchground. What exactly is Pitchground?
So Pitchground is a SaaS marketplace. It's inspired by Kickstarter.com, where we try to bridge the gap between early stage SaaS companies and early adopters or early users and small businessmen. Where we found a very critical problem statement that small businesses cannot afford to pay $10,000 a year for these mature enterprise softwares. So they end up writing and doing things manually in an Excel sheet for everything. Versus these early stage companies, they are not able to attract enterprise anyways, and they are not able to attract small businesses as well, right? So that's where we came up with a model that was purely inspired by Kickstarter.com to build that particular gap where it's a win-win for both of them. So the end users end up getting a fantastic pricing, and the companies end up getting that early users, because for early stage companies, it's not about how much money you can make, but it's about how many people will use your product and talk about it. That's where the money comes in. And if you cannot make people stick around and use your product, no one will talk about it. And the growth for any SaaS company happens when people are talking about it, because that's when you get the customer for absolute zero. So for example, today, everyone talks about Zoom, everyone talks about Canva, right? Now that's a zero customer acquisition cost for them. That's when a SaaS company sort of hits a product market fit and starts growing when people start talking about it. But to get to that stage and make people stick around is the most hardest part for any early stage SaaS companies. And this is why the failure rate in this industry is so high.
Yeah. So like Pitchground itself, how does like if I'm a founder of a SaaS company, I've created a product. Now I need early users. And if I come to Pitchground, what is process from there on? Like I put all my details.
A very, very, very lengthy process. I don't think the webinar
like
would be enough to.
In short, like how do I benefit from your platform? I just want to ask that. Like if I'm a SaaS founder, how do I benefit from your platform?
Just reach out to us. We look into and dive into what you're building up, whether you're right fit for us or not, how mature your product is. And on the basis of that, then we take you on board and we help you throughout a journey using a design thinking pattern. We help you through that design thinking pattern to ensure that your chances of being in that 8% is a lot higher. And we start working with regards to that. And then eventually we launch you on our platform. And then our global audience discovers about your product. And from there, your journey begins as a SaaS founder.
So in a way that if I'm a SaaS founder and if I'm not working with Pitchground, the ideal way would be that I create some sort of audience for my product or have some sort of community and then go and pitch it to them and then ask them to be the early users and then give me the feedback so that I can develop it more. So in a way, can I say that Pitchground is helping me to do that in early days of the startup?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing.
Okay, exactly. And then so like, I don't know if we should be diving into how exactly Pitchground works, but like, do you charge some certain fees from SaaS founders or what is the business model there exactly like? And how do you get best deals out of the companies for the end users?
Sure. So to answer your first question, we work on performance based model, which is
Okay.
for every single sale that comes in, we take a percentage. This is how marketplaces work in general. Any
Yeah.
marketplaces around the world, this is a standard business model that, hey, you bring in the sale, you close, and you take a certain percentage. So that's our straightforward business model that we have. Now, with regards to your second question, can you repeat the second question quickly once again?
So like, how do you convince founders to create good deals for the end users? Because there are lifetime deals going on your platform. There are many good deals that end users can use to benefit out of. So how do you convince them? What is general process?
Like I said, the most difficult part is not the cost, right? Because once you have built a product, your server cost is typically 5 to 6%. That's it.
Yeah.
You don't have any other further cost associated if you, again, as long as you keep on developing the product, right? So typically, let's say, even if you onboard one customer support person, it can handle pretty much about 2,000 to 3,000 clients, because the whole idea of SaaS is self-sustained, right? You do things yourself and you use the service yourself. And that's why it's cheaper than any traditional services, right? So to give you an example, if I tell you that, hey, I need to do PR. So you're going to tell me that, hey, I will have to send out emails manually to people. That's very expensive and lengthy process. Versus just using a software, you have the database and you're just blasting them out. Now the software is doing the job for you. That's cheaper, right? Versus someone doing manually, because humans, if they're doing it, definitely like the salaries and everything would be a lot higher. And that's why when it comes to SaaS, the cost associated to run a SaaS is very cheap. So the server cost, like I said, is typically around 5 to 7%, depending on you have really optimized your servers. But then you're working on a very high margins over there with softwares. And that's why everyone wants to get into software as a service business, because the margins are incredibly high.
Yes.
So
Yes.
this is where they're pretty open to negotiating on the pricing, because for them, initially, it's not about how much money they can make. It's about how many users can start using their platform. Because today, if either one of you is using any software, right? Anytime you speak with your friend, your colleague, or any space podcast, you're going to mention that software. Now, did that software company pay you to do that? No, they did not. But you're using it. So eventually what happens is that early stage users, right, or even small businesses in general, they end up becoming your brand evangelist without them asking you about it, as long as they keep on providing you and helping you build your journey better. They can keep improving their product better and they can keep helping you out. You end up talking about it over and over again, right? Why did MailChimp become such a successful bootstrap company around the world? The sole reason is because it was simple to use. People can afford to use it, right? And people would start talking about it in everywhere, right? Even right now, we're taking an example. So that means that anyone watching this podcast who doesn't know about MailChimp gets to know about it. They gets to know about Canva. This is what brands do. This is how software as a service works. So the margins are incredibly high in software businesses. So the first 1,000 user is the most hardest to get. So when you're working on SaaS or anything in general, 0 to 1 is the most difficult. 1 to 10 is 10x easier than reaching from 0 to 1. So the part from 0 to 1 is something that they're going to cross. And that's where cost is not relative for them. What really matters to them is to ensuring that, can this cost cover my server cost for the next 2 years? Yes, it can. And that's when they get going with, and that's why we are able to negotiate so much better.
That's really like sweet spot that exists. And so it's incredible that you are also helping end users and you're also helping the SaaS founders to grow together. And so like, and you run a lot of, like you'll have to do marketing eventually for them, right? Because they're coming to you, you're helping them reach the early customers.
Yes.
So where are these early customers coming from? Is it, we have seen community pages on your website as well. You run a very large community on Facebook as well as on Discord. Now you're creating a community on Discord as well. So can you walk us through the community science behind products?
So community has always been an essence of what I do and how I do things. And we got started with community building long ago because it's very important that there is an openness today, there is transparency in terms of how things are happening. And that helps out businesses to build trust in a better way. So companies, and this also ensures that people are approachable today, right? And that's the most important part, that how approachable you are. So for example, Bilwa reached out to me on Twitter, right? It was very approachable. I responded to her right away. So it's all about how approachable you are. And when you end up building a community, regardless of the platform, right? It's not about Discord, Facebook group, or any other community. It's not about that. It's about giving that sense of availability to your users that, hey, look, I'm available. And that bridges the trust, right? That makes that bridge between you and that end user, and it creates that trust, which then leads to further business relationships. So it's all about that trust, and community gives you an ability to communicate in a much more effective way. And that's where community-led approach was something that we figured about 3-4 years ago, that, hey, this is the approach that we should be taking. Regardless of whatever happens, it will bring in a lot of transparency. Definitely, there's a lot of pros, but there's also a lot of cons, right? Anything that goes wrong, it gets 10x highlighted when you're building community. Yeah. But when you're doing good, it also gets 100x multiplied then, yeah. Right? So the risk to reward ratio is very high. So that's where we decided that we're going to take this community approach, and that's the best way to really do it. And that's why we started building a community, and we're going to remain community-led platform.
So what type of, like, you have to also keep the community engaging, right? Now you have big number of people in your community. So what type of things that you provide to them to be part of community, and how did you onboarded them? Like, how did you onboarded initial users to your community as well?
So the most important part is to find out your value prop. What is your value prop? If you don't have a value prop, then the community is just gonna be done, because if you do not provide a value prop, people will just leave. People will not stick around. So our value prop have always been the education first that we have taken, because I come from, I have a lot of experience in marketing and sales since a very long time, right? I use that as the bridge to help these businesses with all of the stuff that I know that they would typically pay like thousands of dollars of courses to learn elsewhere, right? I share all of those information for absolutely free. I share and build Pitchground in public that helps them to understand what they should be doing with their business. Now, when they are able to learn about it, they are able to see what strategies have been implemented by Pitchground, by Udit. It helps them to take some decisions, right? Hey, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. He shared this based on data. And everything that, all the value props that we share, right? It's all purely based out of data. So my documentation, what I'm doing is I'm basically documenting my journey and then sharing it in the form of content with everyone on a daily basis. So they get like fresh insights every single day, what's working, what's not working. And this keeps them around for a lot longer period of time. And when they start buying certain software and start using it, they see that it's incredible because now they can start saving money at the same time. And they are now being a part of someone's journey as well. And when some of these companies grow way too big, they can proudly say that, hey, I know the founder. I was there in the part of the journey. And that ends up building up a lot of good networks out there. And that helps everyone because ultimately is that network that you're building. Everything else is sort of subjectory, right? So again, if we go back and if we take an example of Canva, right? The founder of Canva pretty much must be knowing the early users even today, right? And those early users must be able to would be able to reach out to the founder very easily today. Now she's built such a very high level of networks that if any of the early stage users would probably ask for any sort of request or something, there's a very big chance that she would respond and she would also take care of it, because it's that early stage connections and networks that really matters. And this is where the whole concept of community comes into picture. And that's one of the biggest reasons why, if you're able to build it, we were able to onboard more users and we are able to provide these value props, because now a lot of our early users go and say, hey, I know Udit, right? Because they were in the initial part of the journey and I'm still connected with them. Anytime they want to get on a call, right? I send them my calendar link and I just tell them, hey, let's get on a call. And I still help them. So these things make a massive difference. And that's where your entire network comes into picture. So you network, and that's how you would really grow your business.
Okay, amazing. So I now want to talk a little about entire SaaS industry in general, because SaaS is something like which is really easy to enter. As an engineer, you can create a product and wish that users are coming to you and you start creating a company out of it. But as you have been working in SaaS for really long, so if you have to focus on few aspects of SaaS that are really important, and obviously product is one, but product can be created, but there are other things that engineers tend to not focus on, such as sales or marketing or other stuff. So can you shed light on that what are important aspects of while creating a SaaS product? If, say, suppose I'm having an idea and I want to create a product around it and I'm working on it, then what should be my general steps or things that I should keep in my mind always?
So the question is about building the product, right?
Yes, building and growing product in general.
So I think those are two completely different questions, and those are two very vast questions. You want
Okay. So like general guideline for building product. So suppose I'm building a product and I need early users, and obviously Pitchground is one way to go. But then what would be general the key aspects that you would want me to focus on and not miss out?
So I think we talk about the building the product first, because again, the marketing the product is a completely different subject and it's a very vast topic. So when I'm going to start with like building up the product, right? The very first thing that anytime you're building a product is you need to test out whether there is a demand for your product or not. And that's where I came up with this concept of idea, build and scale stage, right? The three stages of any businesses to grow. Especially in SaaS, this is very important, where you have to emphasize more on the ideology stage. If you're not spending a lot of time on your ideology stage, there's a big chance that you would actually fail. Because while you think your idea is worth $1 billion, in reality, it's not. Till the time customers take out the credit card and start paying you for the service, right? If that is not going to happen, your idea is not worth $1 billion. So this is where I came up with the idea of setting up your landing page and trying to get your first 100 users without actually building the product. And just telling them, hey, let's get a call to understand how can I solve your problem, right? And then once you are able to do that, ask them, hey, I'm building this product, would pay $1 for it. If they're able to pay that $1, that means they have started trusting you that you will be able to solve this problem. But if someone is not trusting you for even $1, there's something wrong. And that's when you have to start analyzing. So this is where I came with this ideology and concept, which is working out great for a lot of these SaaS companies. Is depending on the number of people out of 100 who would pay that $1, that's your chances of success. So if 50 people pay you that $1 out of 100, the chances of your success is 50%. Now, in order for you to increase your chances, focus on those 50 people who did not pay. Because this is an idea stage. You do not need to focus on the people who have paid because they've already paid, right? You have to focus on the people who did not pay for the product. Ask them why. What's the problem? Do they not trust you enough to solve the problem? Are they so worried about their $1 that they cannot even trust you with that $1? Or is your personal branding so very bad that people cannot trust you for $1? Or there is something really wrong about, hey, I think I can just solve this problem myself, right? Get onto that and see how you can increase that. The moment you reach 80%, that's when you need to start building your product. Because now the 80-20 risk ratio is a very favorable risk ratio for any founder. 80% chance of succeeding, I'm going to bet on it, right? Similarly, when you see that 80% of the people are ready to bet on you, that's when you build out an MVP. Now, when you're building out an MVP, do not code things yourself, use a no-code platform initially, because you want to roll out a simple prototype, and that to a cost-effective prototype. So this is where I would suggest using platforms Adelo for any sort of mobile applications, or Bubble for mobile for any sort of like desktop SaaS, right?
Yeah.
Use this and build out a product in months of time, because with no code, you can typically code about 4 to 5x faster, because you're not really coding, you're just dragging and dropping and building sort of an interface, right? And that doesn't take that long. So in a month of time, you can build a complete prototype based on a couple of use cases. And again, when you're building that, make sure you're just solving 1 or 2 use cases. That's it. You're not trying to, again, don't try to build another Canva, right? Trying to find a gap. And if you're building an email marketing software, again, try to find a gap. Like, what's the problem initially, and try to build just a simple MVP. Now go back to those 80 people, deliver the product and deliver the promise. Let them use it for 3 months or 2 months, right? Keep getting the feedbacks from them based on your initial feedback. This is how you should spend your first 3 to 4 months of starting any SaaS in general. This is how you build the right way. If you try to skip any process, you are increasing your chances of failing. And again, you're starting from zero. So one of the common problems that I've seen with a lot of SaaS founders, early stage SaaS founders, is they want to rush, they want to win, they want to become $1 billion by the end of the year. That should never be the ideology, and that should never be the case. You shouldn't move that fast. And if you try to move that fast, there's a big chance that the quicker the curve goes up, the quicker it comes down at the same time. That's how economic works, right? And when you have a linear growth, it will always be sustainable in the long run. And this is economics. No one can change economics, right? So that's where the ideology state sort of comes in. And that's how you get going with your product. Once you have those users, now try to find out the common ICP, which stands for ideal customer profile. Once you have identified your ideal customer profile, now start building out a persona of users from those initial set of users that are using the product, and see how many users are using the product on daily basis, weekly basis, right? And once you start identifying that, hey, this kind of a user is using my product more, and also at the same time, they're ready to pay me more, and the closure window is shorter. That means I can close such persona in just 7 days or 10 days versus another persona, which will probably take me like 30 days. Let's focus on this ICP. Now you have that. Try to find 100 to 200 more such people. And once you have identified that, then come into platforms like Pitchground and then launch, because now you exactly know who your target audience is. You exactly know what you need to sell. You will exactly know what you need to do. You will have that clarity. And founders with clarity would win, would always go ahead and will shape up and grow very rapidly. And now that you have raised all of the capital from Pitchground, from all of the users, get a CTO on board, give them a good equity, and build out a product. While they continue using your MVP, build out a very rock solid product. And that's how you build out your own IP, right? And that's how you grow from there. And then from there, if you want to raise capital or do anything else, you will have a sustainable model. You'll have the right data, statistics to show to the investors. And when you do that, the chances of people betting on you is going to be a lot higher at that stage, because all investors need at that stage is clarity, how clear you are about your goals, about what you want to do, what you want to build, how you want to take things, and the amount of efforts you have taken to understand the problem during the initial stages. So any founder that does that in a systematic way will have a chance of being in that 8%. But if you skip on any step, you would be in the 92%. So that's how you go and build a SaaS product the right way.
That was very incredible answer, because now like the clarity after this answer is so much that I know that, okay, this is the way to go. If ever I would want to create a SaaS product, then this should be the way, that get first customers and then build on top of that. So incredible answer. And I really loved it. So I think next we should dive into a little bit of your angel investing and content creation. Bilwa, please go ahead.
Yes. So for angel investing, I'd just like to know what, how your journey has been like how did you get into it, and what kind of companies do you like investing in, or what do you see in a company that, okay, I should bet on this, something like that. Yeah.
So I started my angel investing journey last year. It was a very
Mm.
strategic decision. So I don't do angel investing because I want to make 10x money, 100x money, right? If I
Mm.
want to do that, I'll just keep pouring money into my own business because I know
Yeah.
that it will produce much better results for me, right? So
Yeah.
angel investing for me was not a way for me to make money, which is something that a lot of investors do because that's their
Yeah.
bread and butter, right? For me, my bread and butter is Pitchground. My bread and butter is not investing, especially
Mm.
not angel investing.
Yeah.
But it was very strategic for me where I would be able to tap into people's network. I would be able to tap in to building relationships with people, right? When you start building relationships with people, that's when you start growing strategically.
Mm.
Today, I'm a part of a lot of big inner circles, right? Just because I started those angel investment, a
Mm.
lot of big VCs know me, a lot of angel networks know me because I'm very active over there. I'm constantly providing value, helping people who are sort of getting funded at the same time in those networks. And again, it's all unconditional support and value that I'm providing, because of which people have started to get to know me very well over there. And that was the theory behind my thesis behind the kind of angel investment I would do. And what I really look for in any of the early stage founder is, again, clarity, how clear they are, and how big is the market size, how big is the market cap, and can it relate and help me with Pitchground in next 2-3 years? Can their growth help me with Pitchground, or can their growth lead to any sort of growth with Pitchground? So for me, all of these investments are very strategic investments that somehow ties up to Pitchground and the growth of Pitchground, right? So a lot of these companies would have a very big network of founders. I would bet on them because that way I get and tap into the entire network of that founder's network at that point of stage. So that is my thesis of investments. And that's how I've been doing angel investing. Any returns is sort of like a cherry on the cake for me. But I started investing in all of these companies, not because I'm expecting like crazy returns, but purely because that network for me is 10x, 20x more valuable, that I get insights from right away, which otherwise is impossible to tap in. So I just have my unique ways of doing things. And that is what is leading to like a hyper growth of Patreon, which is very difficult to crack. In general, you cannot just like start and expect things to just happen, right? You have to, again, it's all about networks, how much of a network, what kind of a network you're building in, and what sort of a relationship that you're building in. Today, many of these networks, if they get any SaaS companies requesting them for funding, right? They tell them, hey, go and launch on Pitchground first. I want to see the data, right? I want to see whether you're going to actually sell or not, because if you're not selling there, there's a big doubt that you will sell elsewhere, right? Because if you're not even selling something and not able to sell something for even $49, we don't expect you to go out there and sell it for $500 either. So we have started becoming a good testing and traction platform for a lot of these inner circles now. And that's how we have started getting a lot more leads now from this, which is again impossible to get otherwise. So that's how like my angel investing has been very strategic investments, and not a way for me to sort of like make money basically.
Before this, I was actually going to ask you about your marketing strategies for growing your user base. Now, like since I asked this question, I got to know that as well. So again, to just be like, any other marketing strategies you use apart from like community work and what you told us now?
There is a lot of things that we are doing, but a lot of things I cannot say publicly.
Yeah, this is fine.
Just get a couple of the most interesting ones, which could pretty much help everyone. Again, yeah, we're doing like a lot of other things, a lot of funnels, a lot of things. It just depends, like depends on your question, basically.
We
Now,
can actually see that on your website. Like once we opened yesterday, we were discussing this, doing affiliate marketing as well. There's some community work going on. Okay, so I came across Pitchground Academy. So now all the content is for free. So what do you exactly do over there? Is it like some webinars or like proper courses, or you are actually mentoring people to and guiding them through doing this? How is it special from other academies, if I ask you?
so our goal has always been to ensure that education is free, because I come from the entire early stage internet era where if YouTube didn't existed, I wouldn't exist. I learned everything from YouTube, and I am thankful to all the creators back then, because creating contents 14 years ago, 15 years ago was a lot harder because you did not have resources and the internet was ridiculous, right? I come from an era where I was using 256 kbps BSNL internet connection, right? Today, if you have that connection, you'll probably like scratch your head and you'll just throw away your PC and you'll be like, I don't want to use it, right? So it was a lot of painful era back then. And I'm just thankful to all the creators. So this is just my way of giving back, right? And that's why today I can make a much better edtech company, but just cannot charge people for education, because when I started, when other creators are giving you that value for free, when you grow up, you are like, you need to give back to the community somehow. Because out of that community, maybe 2 more people will start providing more value for free to the next generation. That's how we pass on the value to all of the upcoming generation. Imagine if all of this information that we had today didn't exist. How are you going to learn? Right? So for us, that was the basis of the things. And that's why, like, I have always kept education free, or else I'm telling you, like, we would have done so much better, but again, for me, that education first approach is so critical. And that's why I provide all of this information across all my channels for free. Whatever insights I get, I just share it across with everyone, because I know that all of these insights will help people in some or the other way. Even if it benefits one person, I would do it. I don't care about whether it's going to help 30, 40, 100, 1,000 people or not. I just care about whether it's going to help one person. That's all that matters.
That's really an awesome motto, I must say. Like, I don't think anyone thinks of giving out content or providing content with such a pure intention, basically. So, okay. So when you first introduced yourself, you were like, you are the person who put out work like since the Orkut era, let's say. So did you like get introduced to personal branding since then? Like that time, the personal branding word wasn't really used, but did you start putting out content and that's when you realized that, okay, personal branding is really important and I think I should use it in the business part as well. So how has that journey been like for you?
So when a brand tries to tell a story, no one is interested, because whenever a brand tries to act like a human, it just doesn't work. No matter how big of a brand it is, right? Today, if even Zomato is trying to tell a story, no one is interested. But if Dipinder Goyal tells out his story, everyone is interested, right? Because we connect with humans more than we connect a brand. It is regardless of how big the brand is. If Apple is going to tell his story, no one is interested. People know Apple's story because of Steve Jobs. People know about Tesla because of Elon Musk. People know about Microsoft because of Bill Gates. People know about Alibaba because of Jack Ma, right? So there is a personal branding, a person who is representing that brand, regardless of how big or the small brand is. And that is something that I wasn't focusing on till the September, October of last year. And that's when I started focusing on my personal brand, because when I would tell my story, people would listen. But if Pitchground would try to tell its story, people are not interested, because people feel that Pitchground is going to try to tell a story and try to sell me. Versus when you connect with a human, there is no intention of selling, right? There's an intention of just connecting. And that's how our human brains are wired. And that's when I started focusing on personal branding. And since then, it has just exploded our entire growth.
Understood. So, since how long have you been like super active on social media? Like I have seen you like in recent 4-5 months. Like I came across you like in past 4-5 months that you have been very active on Twitter, hosting spaces, putting out threads, and putting out actual valuable tweets. And as well as on the Pitchground account as well, I saw that there are many other things that you have been doing, like hosting events and stuff like that. So, how did you get into this? And I'd like to ask you, which is your most favorite social media platform as well?
So I think you should probably know the answer. Which one?
I know the answer, but I still like asking people because
I started getting active on across and focusing on personal branding only since 5 months ago. That's it. September.
Okay.
Yeah, September, I think 15, 16 is when I started getting active. Mid of September. That's when I started getting active. That's when I started putting out content. That's when I started focusing on the growth aspect of the personal branding. And since then, just been focusing on that. And I think my favorite platform is definitely Twitter. Love Twitter. Connecting with people over there has been pretty incredible.
Yeah.
You're able to share your story. Spaces are incredible way to connect with a lot of people in masses. And Spaces actually removes the entire friction, right? Because you just click, you don't need to register elsewhere. People are
Yeah.
active. People just can just click, connect with you. It's very easy. And at the same time, if you are someone who doesn't want to be active on voice, right? If you're shy, you can also just write a piece of content, and that to a short form content. And I can relate myself a lot to like short form contents. And that's why like Twitter has been like immense for me. And when I started using it very aggressively, I instantly sort of connected, though my account was probably registered back in 2009, I think. But back then the algorithm was not that good and optimized as it is right now. So has been an incredible journey since then.
That's awesome. So has like these 5 months like content creation helped you get more users to Pitchground by any chance, or like make people more aware about SaaS companies and things like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think more than users, more people now know our journey. And the word of mouth marketing has been very high because of that. A lot more people are talking about it, a lot more people are spreading the word. And that is the most difficult part, is to create that effect when it comes to marketing, is making more and more people talk about your brand across elsewhere, and making sure that the names, right, gets included in any sort of regular conversation that you're having. So what we are trying to do, at least in India right now, is replace the word SaaS with Pitchground. So the moment, let's say you talk about food, right, there are two
Yeah.
brands that comes in your mind, probably one is Swiggy and one is Zomato,
Mm.
right? That's exactly what we're trying to do with SaaS in India. The moment people talk about SaaS, the first name that should come into someone's mind should be Pitchground.
Pitchground.
And that's what we are focusing on right now at the moment.
Wow, and that's awesome. So that's all I have in part of content creation. Manav, anything else you want to add?
I think we have like really solid content of 40 minutes
Yeah.
or so, and really helpful content. So I would like to ask you one last question. If you, and this is like very generic question, and you can answer anything. So the question is that if you would want to start back again, what you would do differently, or what mistakes you would avoid, or what lessons you would already keep in mind?
So I think one of the things that I would have done differently is I've never done a job in my entire life. And if I have to go back into my early 20s, I would have probably not started my entrepreneurial journey, but would have actually taken up a job. The thing is, there are a lot better opportunities today in the market than what it used to about 10 years ago. And at the same time, I come from an entrepreneurial background, right? Being a Marwadi, everyone around me is doing their business. All my cousins are doing their business. My uncle, aunt, everyone is doing their business. So I was just born and brought up in this whole like entrepreneurship culture. So if I have to go back ever, and if I have to give like one advice to everyone is, um, start internship and change internship every 3 months. This way you get to learn, and try to do internship in as many fields as possible, not just same sector. So 3 months work in a healthcare sector, 3 months work in a tech company, 3 months work in a SaaS company, 3 months work in an AI company, 3 months just work for an agency, right? Try to learn as much as possible. In your early 20s, spend your first 4 years working under startups where the founders are very insightful, where you can work directly under the founders, right? Either as an assistant, personal assistant, or as an intern, it doesn't matter, or for a year, and keep shifting for the first 4 years. Don't care about how much money you can make. That's the number one mistake that I've seen from a lot of early teens, that they're rushing to make money rather than rushing to learn from people, right? If I would have done that, I would have avoided a lot of mistakes that I made throughout my journey. And I would have learned on someone else's expense. That's very important, because life is too short to be making mistakes. You need to start learning from other people's mistakes. I highly believe in this statement from Jack Ma, right? So I would have done it that way, and then probably in my like late 20s, when I started Pitchground, that's the time to start your startup. It's somewhere around 27, 20. 10 years, if you would have started your journey, like let's say at 18, 19, this 8 to 9 to 10 years, you would have built your capital, you would have built an incredible amount of connections. You would have already have a fantastic branding in place, would have a lot of people that you know. This means that finding a co-founder also becomes a lot more easy, because when you were doing a job, you could have found a lot of colleagues who are incredible in what they were doing, right? And that's when you start meeting more people. You don't meet people when you're freelancing, right? You don't meet people when you are just starting your journey just by yourself. You meet people when you're working with someone. And that's when I would have started my journey. And I think if I would have done that, my journey would have been far better, right? Less sad stories, more happy stories, and more connections and networks that I couldn't build that way. I would have built it that way by meeting more people. That's what I would have done differently. And that's what I would advise to anyone who is listening to this podcast, who are in their teens, especially. Start this way. Don't try to rush. Life is a marathon. It's not a 100-meter sprint, right? Having that early too much money, trust me, makes you more distracted from learning. And your learning, initial learnings and your initial network is what will help you in your entire 30s, because 30s is all about building what you're doing, and 40s is all about enjoying that what you have built in your 30s, because 10 years is a very good year time to build whatever you want. So that is how I would have done things differently, and that's the advice I would give to any of the upcoming generation.
That was incredible advice, especially coming from an entrepreneur, that go do internships, go take a job somewhere and work for really good founders or some companies which are doing great. That
I'm saying start your journey after you have built your network, after you have learned on other people's money, because learning is expensive, and learning mistakes is even more expensive, right? And usually people write all of their books in their 50s. You cannot wait for the next 20 years to read that perfect mistake, right? You're going to get older. So this is where when you are in that young growing startup, you get to learn a lot about processes, about how things are working, how things are very different, and then start your journey. The chances of you being successful as an entrepreneur would go up by default.
Incredible. So I love the answer. I love the entire podcast because it was so value packed. I think it was one of the most value packed podcast on our channel. So great talking to you, Udit.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So any final thoughts, Bilwa and Udit, both of you?
I don't have any questions, but since Manav asked this question last episode to a guest, I still would like to ask this one. So, okay. So since we talked to a lot of podcast episodes or over Twitter, let's say, what is one question you think people should ask you more often and people don't ask you that?
I think people pretty much ask me most of the questions that they see around, and people haven't really dived into my typical stories, but they would rather they're more interested towards listening to what's happening with Pitchground and what's not happening outside of Pitchground, basically. Right? Again, I made that brand. I did my personal branding that way that will make people talk about it.
Yeah.
So kind of like I'm my own victim of the good thing. But then again, I outside of that as well, right? I'm a musician, right? I write songs.
Oh my God.
I'm a certified guitarist at the same time, right? Again, I'm not pursuing that anymore, or I don't like play that often. But whenever I get time, I do that. So I have like a whole other side of me at the same time. So I've probably written over 30 songs. That's probably sitting in my book. I've composed a lot of songs at the same time. So,
awesome.
The other side of me completely.
Wow.
So that is, I think we should definitely have some other podcast episode in future if time permits, and we should talk definitely about you as a person, you as an entrepreneur, you as a person. So we should definitely be doing that. But overall, with this podcast, I'm very happy. This was a very value-based podcast, and I learned a lot personally from this. We both learned a lot from you, and it's always great to learn someone so experienced and someone in the space of entrepreneurial startups and SaaS products for so long, and learning from them. It's like we are privileged to do this. We are privileged that you came over, and thank you for coming over for the podcast.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much, Manav and Bilwa, for the invite. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
you.